The current video is for ANVISA Brazil requirements for the force degradation study. This study is also known as FD study, or it is known as FDS. ANVISA is a regulatory authority from Brazil for the Brazil country. It has some specific requirements for the force degradation study. That's why I thought that I should make video on this to let the viewers understand and know regarding the requirements. Force degradation study is a stress study for the APIs and the formulations to degrade the API, forcefully to stress the API for degradation, to understand the degradation pathways, to understand the conditions in which the API get degraded, the formulation get degraded, and the impurities are formed. The force degradation study is also required to show the stability indicating nature of the method or capacity of the method. This study gives important information regarding the intrinsic stability and the conditions in which the API get degraded. ANVISA Brazil requirements for force degradation study. Brazilian Health Authority is ANVISA, and it has given different guidelines like RDC 53 2015. Similarly, different guidelines are there. You can take note from this slide. Coming to the force degradation study, FD study or FDS, it is a part of degradation profile study. It is a part of degradation profile study, DPS. It supports stability understanding, impurity identification, selectivity of the analytical method. So, FD study is done to have understanding about the stability nature, have the understanding about the impurity generation pathways, impurity identification, specificity and selectivity of the analytical method. The regulatory basis is the guidelines provided by the ANVISA for API, drug substance, drug product, analytical validation or selectivity, and FDS report expectations. So what are the expectations of the regulatory authorities that we will understand? Mainly for the FD study, the stress conditions are applied like heat, temperature, humidity, acidic pH, basic pH for the hydrolysis, oxidation, light, photolysis, sometime temperature in the wet condition and dry condition is provided so that the API intrinsic stability can be understood. Technical justification required if any condition is not used. The FDS design requirements as per the drug product. Stress conditions must include heat, humidity, acid base and oxidation. So another requirement is metallic ions. ANVISA has a unique requirement for the force degradation using the metallic ions or exposure to the metallic ions. Then photolysis and apply stress to the drug product, API and placebo. So you need to apply the conditions like heat, humidity, acidic pH, basic pH for hydrolysis, oxidation, light and metallic ions to both the API and the drug product and the placebo, so that through the placebo you can compare the degradation behavior of the API and the formulation. Execution criteria: the degradation should be at least 10% or above 10%. So target the degradation above 10% but not complete degradation. You should not target the complete degradation. There should not be complete degradation. If less than degradation under harsh condition, provide the justification. Endpoint: sufficient degradation or equivalent to 6 months at 40 degrees Celsius 75% RH exposure. Analytical requirements: As per this guideline, RDC 166 2017, FDS must demonstrate mass balance, that is 100%, then peak purity and analytical method selectivity. What is mass balance? So the meaning of mass balance in simple term is that if your initial assay is 100% and you get the degradation of, let's say, 10%, so degradation will be 10% plus assay will be 90% and the total will be around 100%. So mass balance is required to be demonstrated approximately or equivalent to 100%. Peak should be pure, peak purity should be there, and the analytical method selectivity is required. Reporting requirements as per the guidelines. Report must include the introduction, experimental result and discussion and conclusion. Introduction, degradation prone functional groups, analytical methods for that. Experimental, stress conditions, exposure details, chromatograms. Result and discussion, mass balance, pathway, impurity limits. Conclusion, degradation behavior and impact on stability and storage. For example, if you get the understanding from the force degradation study that the drug is sensitive to the acidic condition, then you will have the understanding what type of impurities are formed, how much impurities are formed because of the acid exposure. If the drug get exposure to acid, then what is the degradation behavior, what is the impact on stability and storage. And from the formulation point of view, if the drug is sensitive to acid, then you should carefully select the dissolution media. You should carefully select the acidic excipients, or you should avoid the acidic excipients, or you can provide the basic environment to the molecule. So this is the information as per my experience based on the force degradation information. Submission is in the CTD format 32P 5.5. Non-CTD filing, then it will be through the item 16. So it is somewhat different information I have included here, but you should have understanding about at least the FD study and the report contents like introduction, experimental, result discussion and the conclusion. The formulator and the analytical people should work together, should understand the degradation behavior and then make the report. What makes ANVISA different? So first is the metal ion stress. Other authorities like EMA, US FDA, generally they don't recommend to use metal ion for stressing. As for ICH, it is not required, but for ANVISA it is mandatory. Target degradation not defined by the ICH, but it is around 10% required by the ANVISA. And it is quite justifiable and it is scientific, because if you are going to give the assay limit of 90 to 110, then at least 10% degradation you should detect and you should have, so that you will understand the degradation behavior. Stress for placebo, for ICH it is optional, for ANVISA it is mandatory, but it is always good to have stress for the placebo as well. FDS depth is basic for ICH and it is in detail for the ANVISA. So detailed DPS is required plus justification is required for the ANVISA. ANVISA follows ICH principles, but it is more stringent, requiring the additional stress test for the metallic ions. 10% degradation is the target and detailed degradation profile discussion is required, not just the chromatograms. Peak purity should be there and mass balance is required. FDS must link experimental data to product stability and analytical selectivity. From force degradation data, you will understand the intrinsic stability of the molecule, intrinsic stability of the formulation, stress stability of the formulation and the API, impurity formation pathways, impurity formation or impurity sensitive stress conditions, and you can apply that understanding to the formulation development and for the analytical method development. Then you can apply this to packaging selection, you can apply this to manufacturing process selection, you can apply this to selection of the excipients and storage and stability recommendations. So I hope this video will be giving you the good information about the force degradation and mainly considering the ANVISA requirements. Thank you for being with me.